Welcome to the Weekly Files, your one-stop for major headlines around the world. Let's get right into it. We start with politics in Europe. Franco-British reset. French President Macron visited the UK, the first EU leader to do so since Brexit, signing a cross-channel pact on migration, defense, and cultural exchange, including a biotapestry loan. He met Prime Minister Starmer to solidify cooperation on security and channel migrant smuggling. EU defense buildup. Danish Prime Minister Fredriksson, as EU Council President, urged major rearmament within 5 years. The EU's Readiness 2030 plan includes a €150 billion defense loan, but many member states are hesitant. Von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, survives a no-confidence vote, facing criticism over rule of law enforcement and alliances with far-right factions in Parliament. Migration tensions. A deal piloting a UK and France one-in, one-out channel migrant swap is criticized as symbolic and ineffective versus about 800 weekly crossings. Amid high tensions, the UK police arrested dozens at protests backing the now-banned Palestine Action Group. Hungary's opposition unveiled a new economic New Deal plan to address stagnation. Migration on the Med. Europe saw a surge of about 28,000 migrants via Libya this year, with around 550 deaths. Italy's Meloni backs Libya's Coast Guard despite human rights concerns. Health. Continued humanitarian crisis as Israeli airstrikes in Gaza led to civilian casualties, including children near clinics. Sports and entertainment. The Bayeux Tapestry is being exhibited in the UK for the first time in centuries. Business and economy. Markets unsettled. European equities dropped about 0.7% after U.S. threats of tariffs on the EU and Canada, driven by fears of a broader trade slowdown. EU-Asia pivot talks. In response to U.S. protectionism, the EU is exploring joining the CPTPP to strengthen ties with Asia. Politics in Africa. Cameroon election set for October 12th. The leader has announced an October presidential election amid regional political dynamics. It's unclear if he will run. Nigeria resists U.S. deportee deal, with its foreign minister pushing back on accepting Venezuelan refugees. The ICC has documented alleged war crimes in Sudan's Darfur region amid ongoing conflict. So, let's start with health. In South Sudan, United States budget cuts have, reduced food aid deliveries, though airdrops have still continued. Now, moving on to entertainment, there's been a bit of a stir. Kenyan President Ruto is facing backlash over a $9 million church project, especially since the country's dealing with some serious economic strain. Meanwhile, the Marrakesh Arts Festival is hosting a major national celebration of popular arts, which is kind of a big deal for the region. Shifting gears to business and the economy, small and medium-sized enterprises in South Africa are really feeling the squeeze. Business confidence has hit a 4-year low as these firms deal with macroeconomic pressures. And in Lesotho, the government has actually declared a disaster, citing economic impacts tied to United States tariff fallout. In sports, there's been a key decision regarding Caster Semenya's eligibility from the sporting bodies, and, well, it's really stirred up some debate over the past week. Turning to America in politics, a United States delegation's effort in the Congo broke down unexpectedly, and tensions are still running high over Washington's third country migration proposals. President Trump has announced plans to impose 30% tariffs on imports from the European Union and Mexico, starting August 1st, which has, unsurprisingly, triggered strong responses from trade partners. He's also stirred up controversy by suggesting he might revoke comedian Rosie O'Donnell's United States citizenship, claiming she acts against national interests. Farm raids and deportation policies have sparked legal challenges too, and a federal judge has temporarily halted broad immigration stops in California. And finally, a United Nations report says Haiti's gang violence has now surpassed 5,000 fatalities in under a year. So, let's talk health. Right now, a proposed Republican megabill is under some serious scrutiny, since it could raise healthcare costs and, honestly, threaten coverage for millions of Americans. Meanwhile, the FDA's Vaccine Advisory Panel just saw a complete shakeup. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has replaced all 17 panelists with new members, and well, some of them actually hold anti-vaccine positions. Over in Texas, flash floods have killed more than 100 people, which is really raising alarms about flood preparedness. Out west, there's been a plague-related death reported in northern Arizona, which is definitely concerning. And on the public health front, the US is launching a $29.5 million initiative to release sterile flies, aiming to combat those flesh-eating screwworm outbreaks. Moving on to sports and entertainment, IGA Swiatek absolutely dominated Wimbledon, defeating Amanda Anisimova 6-0, 6-0 to claim her first title. Pretty incredible. And in music news, Bad Bunny's new album, Debay Tirar Mas Photos, is really resonating with people everywhere. It touches on themes of Puerto Rican identity and instability, and honestly, it's reigniting cultural conversations both locally and around the world. Okay, so let's get into some of the top stories out of Asia. First up, Taiwan just carried out its largest ever military drills. And get this, they deployed those US HIMARS rockets, all while regional tensions are still running high. Over in China, May retail sales jumped by 6.4% compared to last year, with especially strong gains in home appliance, sports, and entertainment sectors. And on a more somber note, there's the Air India Boeing 787 crash. A preliminary investigation has revealed that the fuel cutoff switches in the cockpit activated almost at the same time just after takeoff, which caused both engines to shut down. The confusion among the experienced pilots is still under review after the crash that sadly claimed 260 lives. Now, moving on to health news. New reports are highlighting worsening malnutrition in Gaza as clinics are struggling to cope with the aftermath of ongoing airstrikes. Alright, let's check out some other notable headlines from around the world. On Ukraine and the US arms circuit, Trump is pushing plans to supply Ukraine through NATO instead of direct US transfers, which is prompting some skepticism in Europe about policy unpredictability. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is planning another $300 million drawdown in weapons. In papal diplomacy, Pope Leo XIV met with Zelensky in Castel Gandolfo and offered to mediate talks with Russia. Plus, Italy pledged 300 million euros in SME support at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Rome. Russia has launched a massive barrage of hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles targeting western Ukraine. Cities like Chernivtsi, which is near the Romanian border, were hit, resulting in at least 2 civilian deaths. On Iran and nuclear talks, Russian President Putin reportedly endorsed a deal to prevent Iran from enriching uranium, a strategic move that involved discussions with both Trump and Iranian representatives. And in Cambodia, several Khmer Rouge-era sites have now been added to UNESCO's World Heritage List. Thank you for watching, but for now it's goodbye.